Salutations, listener. Welcome to the season 2 finale of A Culture Made of Algorithms. My name is Omar Eileen, and usually we're talking about our media consumption, the culture they produce, and the societies left behind. But today, I'm instead going to change the format because, like season 1's finale, today's all about recognizing the commitment so many of you make on a weekly basis to this podcast by making this episode about you, looking at your responses to the weekly polls that go out on our social medias. Now, honestly, this season finale couldn't have come at a better time, and with summer now sadly very much and firmly over, this episode not only looks back on a season in a contextual sense, but a literal one too. Let's get straight into it then, and look at episode 1, which was all about our favourite lockdown platforms, streaming services. Now, as cinemas have only just begun to reopen, it's probably a great time to revisit this topic, one which questioned if you would revisit cinemas or prefer to stream new releases to your home and invest in home cinema systems. And your response to that was pretty unanimous, honestly, one which would keep the cinema mafia, as I call them, pretty happy. Because on Instagram, when I put out the poll, 83% of you said that you would prefer to watch new movies in the cinema, with 50% of you on Twitter saying the same. And it was an answer that did catch me a little bit of a surprise, honestly, because even though 83% of you thought Universal were making the right decision in releasing new films on streaming sites, 57% of you thought that the cinema tickets were too expensive, and more than 50% of you thought that you weren't going to be investing in home cinema technologies, and 100% of Instagram responses would not be increasing their number of streaming services to catch those latest releases. So it was a bit of a mixed bag in those answers there, honestly. I was definitely a bit like, okay, you think they're too expensive, but you would go to the cinema, but you'd not make the long-term investment. I mean, I get the issue of long-term investment, isn't it? You have to have that upfront capital. So I don't blame any of you. I think if I'm going to invest in home cinema, I probably will, because there's so many new movies coming out on streaming services that I technically already pay for. And, you know, with time, with better job, better income, something to invest in my home is something that I'm definitely going to be looking into. One thing I actually forgot completely and entirely at the time of writing that episode, and is something I've only become to be re-aware of in looking back, was that I had asked or didn't ask about the appeal of drive-in cinemas. And I will admit that the nation being told to only make essential journeys was a theme that I was writing an episode under, and it never really occurred to me to look at and later find the 19 drive-in cinemas that this country has, and have experienced a boom when lockdown restrictions kind of eased. So, sorry drive-in cinemas, I'm going to have to revisit you at some point, because I think you have some great appeal there. In fact, just recently, watching Tenet, some of my friends went to a drive-in cinema and watched Tenet there. Speaking of drive-in, episode 2 was my inevitable drive towards more left-leaning critique, I think. It's one where I looked at the role of capitalism and its role in our relationship with music as a medium. And rather than make the rather obvious left-leaning conclusion that capitalism is bad, I perhaps argue that capitalism has allowed more people to enjoy the works of artists. However, that cost that we've paid in this capitalist system is that the artists themselves have had to suffer. So depending on your position in that argument, I definitely say that you might agree with what I said, but definitely come to a very different conclusion or perhaps perspective, and that's perfectly fine. That being said, I did want to know more about you and your music tastes, which is why I asked where you got your music tastes from. And I wanted to give a special thanks to Instagram users _It'sJustJords, Jessica Posting, and BT Mullins, who responded to the question with messages outside of the poll themselves to say these. So when I asked where people got their music taste from, George said he got his from the streets. Thank you, George. Jessica gave credit to her parents, friends, fans, and weird movies that have soundtracks that stick with her. BT Mullins credits his dad's car, Spotify release radar, and a superior Guitar Hero that is Guitar Hero free. And solidarity with you there, Ben, on Guitar Hero 3 to shout out. That is a game that I actually give the reason to why I even understand and know why Dragon Force's Through the Fire and Flames even exists, and why it sometimes reoccurs randomly in my brain every 3 months. It's also why I even sing along to Barracuda whenever it comes on TV, and it's even why I actually tried to learn Helicopter by Block Party on the guitar. Again, I should say, actually, because I have to shout out to my old secondary school friends for even introducing me to Block Party, and all of us were involved in music in some way. So yeah, shout out to BT Mullins on that one. Now, as for the rest of your responses, 100% of you said that you'd listen to music alone and believe that artists should own their own work rather than labels. I pretty much agree with that. I mean, if you make it, own it, right? As for where the rest of you got your music taste from, 44.4% of you gave credit to your parents or wider family, 11.1% of you to your friends, and 22% of you discovered it yourself. So shout out to you. Now on Twitter, user @millhaven_curse astutely pointed out that they believe that the friend/discovered it yourself answer should be intertwined, and actually I'm inclined to agree. It's a perspective that I had of myself, and I tried to keep it out of the influence of that poll, but it also became the entire bedrock or foundational belief of episode 3, which is when I invited on And With Tex Eads McKenzie. And in that episode, I kind of said that the whole perspective that we ever discover anything for ourselves is very inorganic, and a lot of you agreed with me then as well. So thanks at _Millhaven curse for highlighting the goodness and greatness of that episode and for that perspective that I had and tried not to share. But yeah, I'm glad you were on the same page as me there. Now, one thing popped up in episode 3 was the whole potential for virtual festivals. Something that only 20% of you were looking forward to attending. Unfortunately, I don't see why it's such an easy thing to do, a virtual festival. You don't have to go anywhere. I could be at 3 festivals right now. But it's a figure that did rise to 30% with you on Instagram. On a lighter note though, your parents' tastes apparently were all banging because 100% of you enjoyed the music of your parents' generation. Now that actually pretty much closed our first series on music consumption and us and our relationship with it all. And it's a series that many of you have so far enjoyed, with some of your favourite episodes coming out of that series right at the beginning of the series, and also so many of you had shared it with massive growth to the channel. So thanks very much to all of you. I want to actually thank each and every person who has been sharing the episodes. On particular, many thanks goes out to @JustAbs and @Samafi the Third. In particular, because your retweets were very consistent, right, in during that mini series and even before, back in season 1. So thanks very much to the two of you. On Vera, I want to thank @VeraLoud, who's always there with a like, even if I sometimes think, oh, you know what, that's definitely a pity like, but you know what, nonetheless, it's appreciated. But even though we closed the series looking at music and its relationship with us, we kept looking at the you parts that in that relationship, which is our second mini series, which moved straight into it by focusing on the powers that we as the consumers have when interacting with the media. So again, that episode got chopped up a few times, and we looked at, firstly, the role that we play when looking for as-a-service software. And we chopped up some of the arguments around ownership that we have clung on to, which have either prevented or allowed the sharing and growth of as-a-service platforms. We looked at why we don't engage with those ideas critically. And I want to say special thanks to @JoshuaDGMoses on Twitter for sharing this episode in particular, as well as your brother, because the two of you had this episode to start your own conversation on your own timelines that I got to witness, and it was fantastic to be a part of, and it was very encouraging, I'd say, to look at your responses and your own perspectives in light to its episode. So thanks very much. Now, as for your responses on that episode, only 17% of you thought that we own the things we buy was an outdated way of looking at products. So a lot of you think that the old ways, as it were, that what you buy is what you own. Now, 100% of you, though, thought that we should be allowed to fix the devices that we purchase. So, on this channel, long live the right to repair bill. Now, as for choosing to buy, borrow, or subscribe, Absisante and Alex Reeds both said that they buy. That's on Instagram. Jessica Posting said that she would subscribe for something such as Netflix, Disney+, borrow for something such as books, and buy for others such as audiobooks and films. Meanwhile, BT Mullins again said that he likes to buy physical products, but subscribe to others such as software. And I think all of those responses make sense, especially when you're... I don't know if Absisante and Alex Reed saw that as an either or, but I really like the kind of grey area where like we interact with things quite differently depending on what it is in the perspective of Jessica Posting and BT Mullins. For myself, that's definitely a case. I mean, I'm a mixture in books. I borrow and buy. However, I do have a series of books that I've owned for several years and moved with me to uni. So definitely a mixture there. Now, on Twitter, when asked about the poll, 69.2% of you thought that people should be allowed to fix the devices that they purchase. 23.1% gave it a little asterisk and said they should be allowed to fix the devices that they purchase if they're qualified to. And 7.7% of you weren't sure if you should be allowed to fix things or not fix things, which is perfectly fine as well. Meanwhile, 77.8% of you only subscribe to the entertainment as a service model, whilst the remaining 22.2% of you subscribe to it for entertainment, mobility, and banking purposes. On the topic of believing if owning the things we buy is an outdated way of looking at products, 50% of you said no, whilst 33.3% said yes on some things. Meanwhile, only 8% of you said yes wholeheartedly, whilst the other 8.3% of you were not sure. As for preferring to buy, subscribe, or borrow products that you use, 61.5% of you preferred to buy the products that you use. More importantly, it was the first episode that went live on YouTube, episode 4 of this series, and something that pleased a lot of you, especially a lot of you early detractors who weren't listening in because it wasn't on YouTube, and fair enough. Now, we kept going on YouTube for episode 5 though, where we dived right into the topic of consumer power, so back into our whole relationship about looking at us in the role of media producers. And we made some academically supported cases that you and I, the little people in the big pond, have some power, agency, and even influence in the great big media machine. And that week's poll actually reflected that, because the split was even across making reviews, using your social media platforms, and simply making a boycott being your favorite ways to exercise your consumer power. You also recognize the power of your family, your friends, and your partners, with all of you taking part in the poll, giving them credit as the main influencers in your life. As for why you use the media, 67% of you said that the media satiates your need to be entertained the most, whilst only 33% of you chose the media that you consume to be informed. On a more passive note though, 67% of you were not worried about your media literacy levels, which is fantastic, I'd definitely say. Hopefully there's no fake news or disinformation being shared within your circles of influence, and you are responsible for stopping it, remember that. Now, episode 6, moving very quickly, was about the system fighting back, looking at the shock algorithms online. And honestly, that was an episode that got the largest section of you coming back to me and having conversations in private channels. And that was fantastic. I'm glad to have these conversations with you, especially so many of you who listen and watch the podcast. And honestly, I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to make more content for you that we can have these conversations, because I believe that some conversations around our media consumption are very much necessary. I mean, have a whole podcast about the whole thing. Now, what that poll was about that week was about having conversations about what you suspect might be a shock algorithm and the many ways you theorize them to exist. However, I do have to admit that this was also the point where the polls began to fall off. I think, 15 consecutive weeks of polling is definitely tentative, and so I had to be on my A game when making these polls. And I wasn't always on my A game, I have to admit that. There's only so much you can do within these social media frameworks, and offering you all a Google Doc form to fill out is tedious, I will admit. I don't even like doing them for myself. For people I like on important projects such as, I need help for my dissertation. So I will admit, I dropped the ball here. So apologies. So I'm definitely going to report some of the polls, especially the ones that had more than one response. Now, for that being said, the majority of you who did answer believed that the shock algorithm was in place on social media. 100% of you said yes on Instagram. On Twitter, that was actually split between 50-50 between yes and not sure. So, of this audience, a lot of you believe that a shock algorithm exists. More importantly, though, I do think that it is an indictment of social media platforms more generally, because in regards to user experiences, a lot of us want to use platforms that we trust. And if we're suspicious of platforms, it kind of means that the platform isn't trusted, right? But in episode 7, moving quickly and swiftly on, we began our dialogue into representation, which we just closed out last week. It was a mini-series, and I enjoyed the avenues of discovery that came up in those 3 episodes, especially in episode 7. And I admit here that there was some nerves, particularly when you consider the backlash to anything kind of pro-representation online. Gymshark, even in August 2020, so a few weeks ago, had a massive issue just talking about and announcing that they wanted to talk about Black people during Black History Month. However, all of you great people who are part of this platform kind of and definitely do see the value of other human beings and their experiences. So the feedback to this episode and this series was quite strong, I'd say, with 50% of you reporting that the media you consume does not feature the representations that reflect your worldview. It's definitely hard, I'd say, definitely difficult to find media that represents you and people like you and people who you like accurately. And I'm actually going to come back to that a little bit later, because abysmally, 60% of you did not feel accurately represented in media texts, with 100% of you feeling that producers should make a greater effort to represent the groups of people like you more accurately. And I'm actually inclined to agree there. One thing that did shock me, however, is that following up on this episode, I did some reading as to why so many, this is the thing I said I'll come back to, why so many media producers use terrible representations. And the answer was quite simply, it's what audiences can recognize. They can't always understand why that one character is fleshed out very well if they're a side character, so they choose a stereotype. And everyone understands the stereotype. They understand very quickly if they see the guy in the velvet tracksuit, might be a little bit chubby, kind of walks with his shoulders out wide, elbows cocked, short haircut, wearing gold chains and maybe some interesting trainers or sneakers, whichever they want to call them, and he's from New York, there's a very good chance he's an Italian American and has ties to the mob. That's a media representational stereotype that is used. It's effective that we as an audience can identify that character just by looking at them and saying, oh, I'm expecting them to sound like, and they come out speaking like they are an Italian American. It's unfortunate, and I think it's definitely a wider conversation that we have to have about how we view other people and expectations of them, and how terrible our representations are of real people when we don't have real experiences of them. Which is actually how we ended up on to episode 8 in the first place, which is when we looked at the police as an example of the state and how they use and rely on media representation. However, it was also another poll that kind of went out sad, with this response being somewhat inconsistent between 1 and 2 answers. And with that being said, though, I'm going to look at the 2 answers in particular, because there was a 50-50% split between enjoying the whole idea that there are maverick cops out there and the I like the by the book and maverick cop type of show equally. Honestly, again, it's not a fair representation of the wider public, but that's what you came back to. So thank you to the two poll responders. Very much appreciated, especially with what's going to be coming up next. Because in episode 9, I didn't actually give you a poll. I just thought sort of the responses were falling off a little bit. I didn't really have anything interesting to say about the you, me, us and them episode 9. So instead, I gave you all a chance to send me questions that I would answer here in this episode, which we finally got around to. So there were some questions there that I would like to answer immediately, but then there were also some questions that came up across the entire spread of season 2, so I've included them as well. And let's actually start with the obvious question. Why do you wear sunglasses? This came up from season 2, episode 4, and has continued to persist. The answer, the very short and long answer, is quite simply photophobia. That's something that I have. It's something that I live with. It's something that I deal with. And no, it doesn't mean I'm scared of photos. It doesn't even mean I'm scared of light. It just means I'm hypersensitive to it. And when you are looking at a screen for several hours, it can affect you negatively. I actually do have dedicated glasses and appropriate glasses for such activities. Actually, I can show you now. I can show you my glasses now. Whoops, I accidentally kicked the table. Here we go. Now, these are the glasses I usually wear. For those of you who are just listening and can't see the episode, I wear those blue lens glasses. They're not very thick, actually, which is why it might be a surprise to so many of you that I even need glasses. I mean, people are like, oh, can I try your glasses on? And they do. And they go, oh, doesn't change much. And that's the truth. My vision is generally pretty good. There's a whole story I could probably go into about how I was eligible for the Air Cadets and was very much going to join until I realised you might actually have to go and fight. And I was like, oh my gosh. That was back in my more right-wing youth, trying to be accepted by the hegemony, as it were. But then why don't I just wear the glasses, my normal glasses, my blue tinted glasses, because that's what they're actually made for? Why am I wearing brown glasses? Well, one, brown is very good for blocking out UV and blue light, allegedly, and I feel great looking at them. But it serves a more intricate purpose of not allowing the camera and you at home who are watching the episode to see me read a script when I am reading from it. So there's that. It's quite simply, you can't see my eyes going darting from left to right on the screen as I attempt to read. So yeah, that's the long and short answer. It's not something weird. If you are in my classes, you've seen me wear glasses for several weeks, especially sometimes I go to classes with sunglasses on. There was a 2-week period when my glasses were left in a different city and I had to live without them. So I just wore sunglasses everywhere, indoors and outdoors. It's weird, I get it, but for those who know me, it's not unusual to see me wearing sunglasses all the time. Is what it is. I was then asked, why was I wearing a mask? And again, I just thought it was fun. I was wearing the mask. I was wearing all black that episode, and the mask is black, so I was wearing the mask. And I thought, well, you know what would be really funny? Honestly, nothing. I was just messing about, trying to make fun of making. The thing about making podcasts is that it's very important to keep it entertaining for yourself. It's something that you should want to do. So, it's the same as why I might sometimes wear a blanket and look like Genghis Khan in Marco Polo. It's sometimes why I would wear a mask randomly. Honestly, for this episode, I was thinking of going out and buying a party hat and getting party poppers and saying, hey, so it's season 2, episode 10 celebration kind of thing. Just small things like that. In episode 9, I was asked, what is talking points? Now, talking points, as I scroll down here, is it's going to be what's going to happen between season 2 and season 3. It's going to be looking more closely at media texts that I consume. I recognize that there's an appeal in talking about media texts rather than just media texts as a concept. It's actually something that I wanted to do for the podcast and make, essays about specific things. It's something that I actually do at uni, so I'm kind of saving the good topics for uni so I can get good grades. That's honestly the point. But I also recognize now that there's a valuable skill there to make essays, to practice making an essay process and sharing that with you. I just realized now, actually, there are questions, but I have not given credit to who answered them. So this next one was from BT Marlins and said, when will you do an episode on political economy? Now, political economy would be a media concept that would suit well into the current format. So I'm going to say that for season 3. Speaking of talking points and season 3, actually going back to the previous question ever so slightly, season 3 is going to have to wait a while because I'm going back to school. Yay, the uni year's coming up. I kind of want to focus on that. I don't know how much time I have or do not have to myself and to make these podcasts. Season 1, each episode took a week, so I was pretty much right up against it. I'm going to have to think of a way to do season 3 in a way that kind of releases in December. That's kind of the plan right now. I don't want to wait that long, if I'm honest. That's 12 weeks. So I've done 20 weeks of constant episodes, and then taking a 12-week break is a long period of time. So Talking Points is going to be there where it's a lot less scripted. It's going to be a bit like this episode where it's not scripted very much. Might have a few talking points and just going through the thing that I've been watching. So episode 1, is going to be about Snowpiercer. I want to look at Tenet. I want to look at some other shows. The thing is, it's going to be very spoiler heavy, so I don't know if I'm going to include Tenet so soon. But I might look at things like Dante's Peak, which I watched yesterday. Might look at things such as Good Burger, again, something I watched over the weekend. And just, books, maybe, games, things that have points that are interesting to talk about. Which is why I'm going to start with Snowpiercer, because it's a fantastic political allegory of a media show, or as a media text. And going to look at things like that. But again, it's going to be spoiler heavy. So Talking Points is going to be talking about talking points of media texts. Simple as. So BT Marlins, Political Economy, that's going to be season 3. Alex Reeds actually asked me, why did I even start season 2 without any fanfare? And the truth is, I didn't know how to break up these whole reflections. I wanted to dedicate episodes to you as the listeners, as the viewers, and your responses, because if I'm going to put out a poll every week and you're going to respond, and you're going to put work into responding, I would like to take some time to recognize your input, recognize the time that you spent supporting this podcast. So that's what these are about. I didn't know how to split up the last 10 episodes. I thought it was a good idea, season 1, and I was like, I want to continue it. So now we're in season 2. I thought it kind of puts a good hard limit on the seasons of 10 episodes. And I kind of looked at the schedule. I said I got about 10 weeks before this semester starts. So if I just do another season immediately, I can kind of block out 20 episodes before I take a massive break. But then a few weeks ago, I thought of Talking Points. So kind of talked myself into a bit of a hole here, but I'm more than happy to be in this hole if it means recognizing the input of you as the listeners and the viewers. So thanks very much, everyone. And then the last one was by at Just Abs again, who said, why don't you talk about actual movies? And again, it's just about saving the good stuff for uni, so I can get good grades, have a good life, potentially. But, yeah, actually, oh, sorry. There was one more question by at Just Diggs, or Still Diggs. 1 second. So I had a conversation with someone on Twitter, but they've deactivated. Not sure what to do now. Hope they're okay. Still Diggs, if you're out there, I hope you're okay. Man, that's tough. Alright then, so that's all that we actually have time for this episode. I want to give a special thanks to every single one of you who interacted with the podcast in the last 20 weeks, funnily enough, including this one. Remember, if you want to get in touch with me and you want to hear more from me, make sure to follow me on YouTube. That is channel Omar There'll be a link in the description. On Vero, I'm at Omar. On Instagram, I'm at Omar. On Twitter, though, you can find the podcast specifically as at ACMOA Pod. You can also email me personally by emailing me to acultureMadeOfAlgorithms@gmail.com. And in the meantime, I will be looking forward to hearing from you, interacting with you, sharing with you what I'm watching, taking part in, and enjoying. Because let's face it, if we're going to be taking part in media in this horrible time, let's enjoy it. So take care, have a fantastic day, and I shall see you soon with Talking Points. Stay safe.